Hey listeners, this is Brave Words and I'm Adrienne Ferreira.
And I'm Rob Carlton.
This is a Christmas special today. We've been going through the archives and we found a few Christmas stories.
Christmas doesn't always go to plan, does it?
No. Our storyteller today is Luke Carman. We first met Luke when he moved to the Central Coast a couple of years ago.
Now, Luke Carman is currently the writer-in-residence at the Charles Perkins Centre. His award-winning works include An Elegant Young Man, Intimate Antipathies, and An Ordinary Ecstasy.
This story was recorded at Avoca Beach Theatre and it's called On Coming Home for Christmas.
A week before Christmas, Annie left for good and I retreated to my mother's place on the Central Coast. Mum's unit was dressed for Christmas with tinsel around the door frames and a plastic tree with a silver star dangling on its top. We'll have a lunch tomorrow. Lots of old family, all the old people around this place, she said. The entrance is just full of old people, she said, putting the kettle on in the kitchen. So it's quiet and you'll sleep good tonight. Except maybe the neighbour's girls. My God, she made the sign of the cross. Those girls next door, she said in a hushed voice. The older one, she brings the skinny boys at night and she can't be 16 if she's a day. And the girl's mother's never around. Every night at the middle pub. Upstairs, Carol tells me all the gossip around here, though. That Carol upstairs is too much a busybody her own self, I swear to God. Sometimes she come for tea and we're sitting at the table and she'll be talking about so and such and I just nod my head and I watch the waves break on the beach, the window there. You see the water? She said, pointing out the window of the view. Some days when the wind is bad and the waves roll all white and they shake as if the whole sea wants to bust the channel and sweep the streets under like the big fish did for Jonah. But what am I saying? Oh, look here, she said, turning, and she shuffled softly towards the fridge and lifted out a tray of lasagna in both hands, announcing, your favourite, see? The next morning, I steeled myself for the promised Christmas luncheon with a long and rootless walk. All the town was yawning to awaken in the late morning. Pelicans sat on street lamps, lording it over the white splatter patterns beneath them, and the wire security fences were leaning around silent amusement rides, and pine trees laced with lights and tinsel filled up with shrieking birds. And toward the beach, I wandered past shirtless men emerging from vans, zipping into their wetsuits, and an old grey beard on a mobility scooter drinking a long neck with a fishing rod protruding from his basket. And blonde joggers went by too, jiggling in their active wear, and the waft of perfume and sweat. And 3 Jehovah's Witnesses distributed the leaflets of the kingdom to come near a Ferris wheel. And when I returned to my mother's unit just before midday, I found that Christmas lunch was already underway. I hear you're single again, mate, Uncle Stu announced as I walked in. He was a tall, bow-legged man with laugh lines round her whiskered cheeks, and he was bent to stacking beers in an esky. We're not supposed to talk about it, remember? Aunt Dawn reminded her husband as she stood to kiss me on the cheek. She was a short, smiling woman with a blonde bob. Heartbreak's not fit for Christmas conversation, is it, darling? Before I could answer, another aunt rose up from her chair, my Aunt Lynn, and she kissed me on both cheeks, and she wore a silk scarf over a necklace of pearls, and she smelt of cherry and heavy perfume. And her husband Vince, this grinning bald-headed man with a grey moustache, he was shoveling prosciutto into his mouth and he shook my hand saying something that the meat made incoherent. I won't dwell on the subject, Uncle Stu said. He hands his beers to his brother-in-law at the table. But my God, who breaks up with a man at Christmas time, you know? You already got her presents probably, huh? He said, giving me a serious look as he twisted off the bottle top and handed me a beer. His wife slapped at his face to remind him the subject was forbidden. But she shouldn't have done him like that. What kind of a woman is she, I say? He appealed to her just as my Uncle Dennis walked in from the hallway. Oh my God, he said as he walked in and gazed around at the tinsel and the Christmas tree. It's Christmas, he deduced. His wife, Aunt, walking in behind him, scowling and saying, I remind you before we left, it's Christmas party, you idiot. Her expression changed when she saw the spread on the table. Boston cake, she shouted by way of greeting. Oh, Boston is to die for, to die for. And she dumped her handbag on the couch and left its contents spill as Aunt Dawn was saying, you know, Stu's mother used to make the best cheesecake, she did. Used carnation milk. This is the secret. Beautiful, just beautiful, Aunt Rita announced with the yellow icing spilling from her mouth. Remember German tea cakes, Uncle Dennis was wondering aloud. I am out of wine, Aunt Dawn confessed to me. The one with the green bottle, my love, please. I filled up 6 empty glasses. It's a shame, my Uncle Vinny said, turning to me. About your lady, but you know the girl who makes the coffee from the street from us. She just divorced last year, and he mimed her breasts, enormous, and looked at me, inclining her head. Enough about that woman, the aunt cut in. You always try to push that girl. No one wants that bimbo but you. She's the one with the bikey ex, my mother asked, carrying over a bowl of olive stuffed with anchovies. Yeah, the drug dealer, Aunt Lynn said, disgusted. I'll date the girl, my Uncle Stu interjected. She can have you, his wife shot back. Oh, but it was easy in the old days, Aunt Rita said, lamenting. My boy, Bobby, he's single his whole life. It's not like it was. The girls date 40 men at once. A different man takes them out for dinner every night, and it's pay for the blokes. As she said this, her palm waved about. I remember when a boy just drive you out to the bush somewhere and say, okay, you put out or I don't take you home again. Aunt Lynn said, oh, yes, and men, they don't flash anymore, do they? Aunt Dawn asked, looking at me as if I might have an answer. Remember, they used to call you over and say, excuse me, missy, do you know the way to the bus? And then, whoop, there it is, sticking out large as life. And on the trains, my mother said, yes, the trains, yes. I remember, and that old man at the tuck shop, Mr. Roper, Aunt Dawn recalled, I told the nuns, he's putting his hands up my skirt, and they gave me 6 cuts of the cane for making stories. Then I come home from school, Mum sees the marks and says, have you been giving those poor nuns grief? And she belted me on the backside and said, nothing for tea for you to eat. Yes, you don't upset the nuns, one of the aunts agreed. And who was your fourth boyfriend, Lou? Aunt Rita asked, turning to my mum. You know, the one who had the fight with the serial killer. What was his name? Ivan Milat. She said, no, not the killer. I love the boy's name. Max, the other 2 sisters says, yes, that's the one, tall boy, jet black hair. His hands smelt like motor oil and grease. Yes, just like Dad, said Aunt Dawn. It wasn't a fair fight, my mother assured everybody. We stood outside the Granville Hotel and Milat boy smashed a glass on his head and kicked out his legs. And when poor Max is down, the 2 brothers are kicking and all the others are laughing. His poor face, his blood and teeth is cracking out. And after that, I told everybody, nothing good's going to come from these Milat brothers. But did anyone listen? All those girls could have been saved if someone listened to me. Oh, you didn't know, Uncle Stu said. I know what I saw. I saw the devil in that man. Was it that Max who beat up Dad? Aunt Lynn asked. No, that was Billy Grace's fella, Mum said. Beat Dad with a hammer on the front veranda. Blood everywhere, Aunt Dawn said. No, it was not a hammer, my mother bellowed with a mouthful of rock melon. It was Carpenter's horse. Oh, yes, that's right, Dawn considered. On and on it went, cups and glasses and bottles and cakes and meat and sweet cherry and whiskey and baked pastas and cheeses and stories. Look at the woman on the television, someone giggled, looking over her shoulder at the music video playing in the background. Look how they shake the ass, Aunt Lynn said, fascinated. How they do it, my mother wondered. I'll show you, Aunt Rita said, getting out of her chair. No, don't you dare, her husband said, and he whacked at her with a handful of salami. And as if a distant bell was chiming and a kind of memory, I became aware over the laughter at the table of a quiet knocking at the door. And by now, half drunk myself, I eased out the chair and through the screen I can see the silhouette of a girl. And when I swung the door open, I find a child is standing there in a loose-fitting red hoodie with a dry blonde hair strand stuck to the side of her lips. Can you help me? She said. Well, what's wrong? I asked her. My head's swimming with wine, a beer, and the noise of the tiny Christmas unit. And the child leads me into the opposite unit. And I can still hear my family laughing and singing as I followed. It's dim and it smells sour in there. And from somewhere further in, there's this muffled groaning sound. And as we come to the lounge room, I see the groans are coming from another older girl, maybe twice the younger one's age. And she's standing behind the couch and her face was pressed down into the headrest as though she was stifling sobs and tears in the cushions. And I stood unwilling to go any closer. And then this older sister, she gives out this low animal moan. And for a moment, she lifted her face and I saw that it was damp with sweat and her eyes were rolling red and there was drool dripping from her mouth. And then out from under this white t-shirt that engulfed the girl down to her knees, her thin pale legs are protruding and they begin to shudder. And then from between them comes this sudden gush of fluid. I thought, the girl's pissing on the carpet. And then the realization struck me, I've seen that before. And I said, oh, for God's sake, you need an ambulance, I yelled to the younger girl who looked like she was about to burst into tears. And the older one suddenly became aware of my presence and she shrieked, no, don't call anyone, please, please, between gritted teeth. And her face is red and she groaned again and she pressed her face back into the couch. And I rushed back into the unit where my family is still obliviating around the table. And someone says, oh, there you are, we're about to do the bonbons. And my mum's carrying these empty bottles. And I don't know what words I used to describe what's going on in the other unit. I can't remember. But no sooner do I announce the situation, the aunts, they surged up out of their chairs and they made such a clamour of yelps and curses, all my uncles could do to stagger after. And they're bumping into each other and they're making such a hoot and cavalcade of noise that all the occupants in the other units around, they start to come out too onto the lawn and they're getting in. And then soon the poor girl's situation's been shouted from the yard up to the strangers leaning on the balconies, towering units across the street. And one of my aunts yells out, give the girl for privacy, for God's sake. And when an ambulance arrives, these 2 tall men in uniforms come intercom, and the uncles start waving and urging to the unit like they're castaways signalling low-flying planes. And then I went back inside for the silence of my mum's place, and I sat at the head of the table, and I was watching the waves break over the channel, and all my thoughts just went back to Annie. And there was this faint sound of a baby's cry coming through the door. And then my uncle, Dennis, he staggers in, and he halted when he saw me. He's sitting there alone, and he smiled, and he sauntered over, and he lifted this bonbon, and he waved the limp end at me. "She had a girl," he said. "Now, come on, give your uncle a pull." He had these rosy cheeks. I said, "Yeah, all right, sure." And I grabbed hold, and I yanked as if it was the very lever of the earth. Oh, thank you.
You never forget the first time you see Luke Carman read live. It's just the most extraordinary experience to witness. And his stories, they are so well dramatised. They're always in action and completely immersive.
Yeah, the one thing about being live with Luke in a space too is that he completely transforms. It's that thing of, oh, I've met Luke before, and then what happened to him on stage? And so this is something I'd like our listeners to have a little bit of a think about. If you feel that you present yourself in the world in a certain way, but there's more inside you, writing a story is a great way of presenting to the world another version of yourself, a version of yourself that you want the world to see, but might not feel comfortable in the day-to-day. Watching Luke up on stage, he captures so much of humanity with that extraordinary pen of his, and then when it comes out his mouth, it rocks a room.
It's so much fun. And, you know, I think I'd like to spend Christmas with Luke's family. They sound like a whole lot of fun.
Oh, man. Pressed meats, prosciutto, salami, sure.
Rock melon, wine, lots of wine.
Oh, yeah, and incorporating a berth just next door.
This is perfect. Christmas is coming up.
Yeah, Christmas is coming up. Look, if you're looking for presents for people, I've got a show that I'm touring all around the festivals next year. It's called Virgin in a Knife Fight. You can follow me on Instagram. You can pick up... I think it'll be a nice family kind of Christmas present to go if you've got younger children, sort of 15 to 25. Go as a family. You can have chats about all sorts of things.
And if you'd just like to pick up a voucher from Brave Words, you can go to the website, bravewords.com.au. Perhaps give someone a loving nudge, someone who should be writing, sharing their stories.
Yeah, we're going to try and bring you a couple of other Christmas special stories in the next week or so in the lead up to Christmas. Hope you have a great Christmas.
See you next time.
Bye.